So, hi everyone. Last talk of the conference. I know everyone's tired, everyone's hot, and wants to get this over with, but I'm surprised at the turnout. So hopefully you guys are excited about VR. Well, obviously VR. So my name is Avinash. I like chocolate, and as a kid, I wanted to become an astronaut. But when I was like 8, 9 years old, very wise, I kind of realized, hang on, in my lifetime, we're not going to go much farther than the moon or Mars. So I'm not going to go explore and discover strange new civilizations. That's not going to happen. So I kind of gave up on the whole astronaut idea. But when we make VR, we kind of discover and create new worlds on a daily basis. So for me, this is kind of a dream come true. So lucky me, I can be here and share my experiences with you guys. So today I'll talk about what VR is, some applications. I'll get into the technology behind VR, where the future is going to take us, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Actually, since this is the last session, we can kind of loosen it up a bit. If at any point during my talk there's questions, just raise your hand, I'll toss you that microphone, and we can get into a little dialogue. The thing is, if you don't ask questions, I will be monologuing here for the next 2 hours because I get really into it, which is fun for me, but less fun for you because you guys kind of want to wrap up and get some beers. So, what is VR? Well, let me start by explaining what VR is not. So, we always get this question, like, oh, you're doing VR. Is that like Google Glass? Well, most of you are techies. You kind of know the difference, but a lot of people don't. So they kind of pull it all into the same name, same group. But Google Glass is augmented reality. As most of you know, you see the real world through a transparent set of glasses. You see a layer of information on top of that. So augmented reality, not VR. Now, the other thing that VR is not is a roller coaster. I mean, most of you have probably seen this video on YouTube. I mean, this thing makes for a really fun viral video. But in terms of VR, that guy is not really enjoying himself. So it's fun for us, but not for him. That person is kind of soured to the whole VR experience because he's seeing a roller coaster, getting nauseous and dizzy, falling over. Plus, they're breaking a really nice headset, which kind of sucks. So VR is not a roller coaster. So what is VR? VR is technology that allows you to experience a different reality. This can be a computer-generated reality, so anything you create like a video game. It can be filmed. It's basically anything that allows you to be in a different world that is not your current reality. So it can be a fictional reality, it can be a different place in the world, it can be a different time. Now, technology is all fun, but it needs to have a purpose, because at least that's what I think. If it's just technology for technology's sake, it doesn't do anything. It needs to have a proper application. So when you think about applications, there's something that's very natural to us as human beings. We kind of have this natural drive to share our experiences with our friends and family. If you've just had a really cool experience, first thing you do is you talk to your friends or your loved ones, or you go to a club or a bar and you share your story. And we've been doing that since the dawn of time through cave paintings. But you can go to a bar, like you're just saying, have a beer, share your experiences. And that's just by talking. That's just by using your voice. Now, of course, that kind of technology evolved over time through books and the printing press. And then, of course, film and TV technology. Now, when you think about TVs, I mean, that's relatively new. That's been around for not hundreds of years. And at that time, it's come a long way. It started with these small black and white cubes, TVs with mono sound that you would have in your neighborhood, and everyone in the neighborhood would come and see your TV. That evolved into color TVs, slightly bigger, color TVs with stereo sound, widescreen TVs, home theater systems with surround sound, all the way up to huge IMAX screens with 64-channel Dolby Atmos surround sound. Now, why do these screens get bigger over time? Why do these sound systems get louder and more surround? Well, that has to do with immersion. As a storyteller, you kind of want to involve your viewer, your audience, as much as possible into your story. You want them to be dedicated to the story that you're telling. So by having a bigger screen, by having better sound technology, it helps with immersion. And in that sense, VR is almost the ultimate immersive medium to tell your story. Now, but I can tell a story and I can be here monologuing for the next 2 hours, and most of you will kind of forget what I'm saying. So I can teach a class at a university, and some of the students might remember that. The thing is, if you're involved in an experience, if you trigger that part of your brain where you make memories, that's something that stays. And that's interesting about VR. And we've been doing this for 3 years. The thing is, if you look at a regular 2D screen, and you look at a video, it's like, okay, I'm watching a movie, I'm watching a TV show. And that triggers a different part of your brain. What's been recently scientifically proven that is if you watch a properly created VR experience, you engage the part of your brain where you make new memories. So people that go through a proper VR experience won't remember like, oh, I was wearing this headset and I was playing this really cool game, or I was in this VR film. They will actually remember being there. Sounds a bit far-fetched, but you kind of have to experience this for yourself. And it applies to properly created VR technology. Now, VR technology on its own is not new. Everyone's been talking about Oculus recently, but it's not new. It's been around for decades. We've read about it in books since the 1920s, and in the 1950s, NASA was experimenting with VR technology because they wanted to train astronauts without actually sending them up into space. So VR would make sense to do that. But at the time, the technology wasn't really there. There's actually 3 things that you need to create a properly functioning, a proper immersive VR experience. So the first thing that you need, of course, is display technology, because we're talking about images. So you need 2 small, lightweight displays that you can suspend in front of someone's eyes. They need to be small, cheap, mass-producible, and all of that, and kind of high resolution, if possible. Now, that technology wasn't around in the 1980s and the 90s, and that was kind of the era where the video game industry was still trying to get VR off the ground. The second thing that you need is motion tracking. When you are trying on a VR experience and you have these images in front of your eyes, you want to be able to look around. Now, what would happen with the early VR systems, you would see an image in front of you, you would turn your head, and then the image would follow. You would look back, and then the image would follow. That delay in rendering, it's called lag. Having laggy VR is really crap because it makes you nauseous, and it doesn't really work. Now, that was kind of the standard of the technology in the 80s and 90s. Then there's something called stereoscopic imaging, which basically comes down to most of us have 2 properly functioning eyes. By having 2 eyes, that allows you to see depth and scale. That's the way you perceive the world in reality. That's what you would want to replicate in a VR system to get a properly immersive experience. Now, Nintendo tried to create this with a gaming system called the Nintendo Virtual Boy. Are there any gamers here besides myself? Oh, yeah. So who's tried the Virtual Boy? A couple. Now let me ask you something. Do you know anyone that will last longer than 5 or 10 minutes in the Virtual Boy? See, he's saying no. The thing is, Nintendo made an attempt to create a VR gaming experience, but the 3D technology that they tried to create was equivalent to early days 3D cinema. So it didn't really work, and it made you nauseous. Your brains and your eyes had to do a lot of work to compensate to create that sensation of depth, and it wasn't really there. So 3D technology wasn't there. In terms of lightweight, easy mass-producible displays, that headset that you see on the left weighs about 6.5 kilos and balances on the top of your head. Not really lightweight or comfortable. Motion tracking and being able to move in VR, the system that Atari created, looked really funky and high-tech. It didn't really work. So they all tried, and even though they had hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D, they all failed. At the same time, this is gaming technology. At the same time, of course, Hollywood gave us a very different view of what virtual reality was supposed to be. So there were movies like Lawnmower Man, Existence, Strange Days. Anyone here seen Strange Days? Oh, 1, 2. For the rest, this is yes, this is no. All right, well, movies that showcase different views of virtual reality. Most famous example is, of course, The Matrix. Yes? I see a couple of yeses. Okay, but the thing with The Matrix, of course, is you have this big metal pin that sticks in the back of your head, not really comfortable or marketable, so didn't really fly. And that's kind of the Hollywood vision. And of course, compared to that, there was also this really old-school view of seeing a CGI version of yourself, going to these trippy worlds, and having these big headsets and immersive systems. Looks cool in sci-fi, didn't really apply to reality. Now, the thing, though, is the vision that it gave was interesting. This is a clip from Strange Days, and the guy that we're seeing is a paraplegic. He cannot really walk. So he's having this experience where this guy who cannot walk is suddenly running across the beach. And of course, there has to be a beautiful babe. Now, to me, this vision of Hollywood, it's cool, but it's fictional. I mean, it's a virtual world that feels completely real and photorealistic, and this guy gets emotional. He has an emotional response to experience something that he cannot experience in real life. This is, of course, fictional. We started thinking, what if? What if we could turn this into a reality? Because in reality, Oculus is currently one of the most well-known brands in the VR space. When Oculus started a couple of years ago and introduced their VR headset, the Oculus Rift, they said, we are going to make the most amazing immersive gaming system for virtual reality that the world has seen. So that was their focus, creating gaming experiences. Why? Because gaming VR was kind of the holy grail for the entire game development industry. Everyone's been talking about that, but no one was able to deliver on that promise. So my other company, called Disrupt, was a digital production house, and we've been creating digital animations, VFX, 3D animations, for music videos, commercials, and you name it, for 15 years plus. And I mean, we kind of know the space. We know the VFX industry. We know how to film something. We know how to add photorealistic CGI and put that all together into a really cool immersive experience. So because that's our background, we were like, you know what? And personally, I'm a gamer. I like to play video games. So when we heard about the Oculus, I was like, can we do something with the talent and the knowledge and the coding experience that we have and this VR headset? Can we combine these things? So we got one of the early prototypes, and we started playing around with it, writing a bit of code. And yeah, we were able to get our 3D animations, our in-game stuff, into this headset. So that was kind of cool. But in the back of our minds, or in my mind, I still had that idea that we saw in Strange Days. I mean, can we take this further? Can we create something that's actually immersive, actually photoreal, and really put you inside that world? Well, that brings us to a couple of challenges. Creating something in-engine and creating a VR experience in-engine is not really that difficult because you have a non-existent world, so you can place the equivalent of your eyes into a VR, into a game experience. Now, doing that in reality means that you would have to film something. Now, filming something in stereo 3D is not really that difficult either. You basically get two cameras, one for the left eye, one for the right eye. You put them next to each other, and you have a stereoscopic image. That's the technology that is used for movies like Avatar. And I'm sort of skipping the part of post-conversion 3D, if that means anything. Basically, you would need to shoot with two cameras, one lens for each eye. Now, in VR, you want to be able to look around. So you would need a camera that has a completely 360 circular image. OK, we can do that. I thought you can basically take a bunch of cameras, put them in a circle, and fire them all at the same time. That gives us a circular image. Works. I mean, that's completely possible, and it works. But the problem there is, you look around in a flat sphere. That sphere does not have a layer of depth because you have two eyes. So technically, you would need two cameras, but two spherical cameras next to each other, one for the left eye, one for the right eye. If you would do that, if you would create two circular cameras, put them next to each other, and you would look to the side, you see a camera. If you look to the other side, you see a camera. So you are kind of faced with the challenge of creating an invisible camera. So we started calling Canon and Nikon and all the camera companies that we've worked with in the past and explained our idea. And they all told us, you guys are batshit crazy. That is not going to work. You cannot bend the laws of physics because you cannot create an invisible camera. So good idea. You can do a 360 video, but you cannot do a full 360 stereoscopic video. Technically not possible. So that's exactly what we did. 3 years ago, we created one of the first cameras that films a 360-degree horizontal image, a 360-degree vertical image without seeing a tripod underneath you or a black hole up top. And we could do that in full 3D stereoscopic imaging. So suddenly we had a piece of technology in our hands that worked, that you could wear a headset and that would make you believe that you're actually there. So that's the We Make VR Falcon. That's one of the cameras that we developed. We go through these different versions of cameras, I'd say, every 3 months. So it's cool that we created the technology, but we didn't start the company to create technology. We started the company to create experiences, to create applications. Because in a couple of years from now, probably in 6 to 12 months from now, creating VR content is going to be a level playing field. Every one of you will be able to get a VR camera and shoot something that's really cool. So it's not about the camera, it's about how you apply it. So as a company, what we do is actually we bring people moments of joy. When you put on the headset and you experience a really cool, fun VR experience, we always see the same effect. The corners of the mouth go up, people go like slack-jawed and go like, ah. Or they try and start and walk around and bump into people. I mean, they generally have a good time. So that's kind of what we do. We want to make people happy with most of the stuff that we create. And because we go beyond just entertainment and just doing stuff that's gimmicky and cool, but actually try to make useful applications, we get a lot of press. We were invited by the BBC. We got a slot, 6 minutes in prime time, to explain what we can do with VR beyond gaming. We get a lot of exposure. We were invited to the Dutch TV programs. We even got to present to the Dutch King, which was kind of cool for us. But I'm, of course, not objective. After the presentation, just Google us and see what the press or other reviewers say about us, and draw your own conclusions. Or in case you haven't, try our demos or download our app, and you'll see what we do. So VR, where are we today? It's not just about Oculus anymore. Samsung has moved into the industry with the Samsung Gear VR, which is basically a cheap mobile VR device. There's, of course, the consumer version of the Oculus that's for sale now. HTC jumped in the VR game with one of the best headsets around at the moment. Sony, with an installed user base of 40 million Sony PlayStation 4 units, they're releasing a VR headset as well. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many new headsets coming with really cool technology. And I can't talk about everything, but these are a couple of the most well-known headsets that are pretty good. Now, we're seeing more and more of these headsets. The technology is becoming more and more accessible. So what do? We go beyond gaming. We can, for example, take you to an event, a music festival that you physically could not attend because it's on the other end of the world and you don't have the money to fly there, or because you didn't have time to go there. And we can go beyond the VR headset that you've seen. I mean, of course, you can buy a $600 Oculus or spend a lot of money on a high-end gaming PC and buy a Vive. But since this is all based on small displays with a bit of software, that means that you can basically turn every mobile phone into a simple, basic VR device through technologies like Google Cardboard. So suddenly, we're not talking to a couple of 100,000 enthusiastic developers or 1-2 million early adopters and innovators. We are talking to hundreds of millions of people that could experience the content that you guys create, or that we create. So suddenly we're talking to a big market. And it's not just getting these headsets and installing software. We are also beta developers for Google, YouTube, Facebook, and some of you might know that the Facebook timeline has now been VR activated. So without even installing a piece of software beyond the Facebook app, you go on your mobile phone, you scroll through your timeline as you do normally, and suddenly you see this video, and you move your phone, and suddenly you're looking around in a 360 experience without doing anything. That makes it really accessible. Now, if you combine that with really cool content, like Star Wars, flying over through environments in Star Wars, actually going inside the Death Star, or standing on the bridge of a Star Destroyer, which I kind of like to do, then suddenly you have cool content that will draw people into the platform. So it becomes really accessible. So technology is there, now it's about how do we apply it. And if you want to try something, just download our app or go to our Facebook page, try some of our 360 content, or download our app and find out for yourself. So what do we do with this? One of the first things that we created was a very simple application, a tour through the canals of Amsterdam. So, for example, you could be living in Japan and be debating, am I going to take my trip to Europe? Well, download the app, put on the headset, and suddenly you're in this canal boat. Now, what was interesting about this was one of the first things that we created, and we tested it in our offices. We sat people on these swiveling chairs, put on the headsets, and they were looking around, looking at the bikes and at the water and at the other boats. And after a couple of minutes, they would take off the headset, and they would look around again. And then they would look at the host and ask, well, where's the heat blower and where's the fan? And we were confused, like, there is none. Why are you asking? Well, I felt the heat of the sun, and I felt the wind in my face. So where's the fan? And then we realized, if your experience is immersive enough, if the quality is right, your brain becomes flexible and kind of fills in the blanks. And that's where we kind of started to learn, like, hang on, this is not just entertainment. This can go so much further. And since then, we started working with universities and researchers to kind of map out why these things work and don't work. But commercial application, of course, you can go to a virtual concert and have the best seat in the house, but you could also press a button and actually be on stage with your favorite artist or go backstage. Or we can do stuff that is physically not possible. We created this system, an ultralight version of our camera that we flew, and we created this platform that you can lean into, and suddenly you are actually experiencing the sensation of flight. The weird thing is that getting people to lean into that system and fly, everyone took to that like a fish to water. It was very natural. Just when we put them back on their feet, that's where they get confused. Like, hang on, this is weird. I have to walk again. So this really messes with your brain in very unexpected ways. So it's cool to discover that. Now, as I was saying, we go beyond entertainment. What about healthcare? Let's say you don't have 45 physical therapy sessions in your insurance package, but there's something wrong with you and you need them. We created an application where you can spend 1 or 2 sessions in the gym with your physical therapist. You take the app home, you put on in your living room, you put on the headset, you look around, you're in the gym. You look to your right, and the instructor's there. He's looking back at you. He realizes that you're looking at him, and he starts your program. He explains what you need to do, what kind of exercise you need to do. And you can do them in the safety and comfort of your own home, which suddenly makes healthcare really accessible. Or, of course, architecture. You can make really cool 3D renderings and beauty passes and show that to your client. But what if we can actually let you walk around in the building that you've designed? Or let you change stuff, change the colors, change the doors, change the windows. So suddenly you go from doing 2D renders that you've created in your 3D package to something that becomes really immersive and interactive. And of course, on the commercial side of things, I mean, we deal with a lot of music labels, and they suddenly smell big money. Like, hey, hang on, we can do a concert or in a summer festival, and in addition to the 50,000 people that go there, we can actually sell 5 million virtual tickets with all the extra pros benefits of being there, being able to see these shows that you couldn't see. Let's say you go to Lowlands. You go to the main stage, see your favorite artist. Without exception, after the concert, you always run into your friends, and they said, well, we were at the Alpha stage or at the Bravo stage, and this artist was playing, and you really missed out. Now you can actually go back in time and see that concert again, as if you were there. But you can also flip it. What if we would get the 5 best string players in the world, and they would give you a private concert? Now that is only for the happy few. In this case, we can actually release that to millions of people globally. So another pretty cool application. Elderly care. Well, if you're like 80, 85, no one here isn't in that age brackets, I think, but you probably know someone that is, like your grandma. Those people are not really mobile anymore. That doesn't mean they don't want to travel or to discover new things. What if you can be in the safety and comfort of your own home, wear a headset, and suddenly you're on the Great Wall of China, or you're in Africa, or you're in the Museum of Modern Art that you've never visited. Suddenly you give them this kind of freedom back. Very liberating, and it goes just beyond fun and entertainment. Or agoraphobia, people that don't dare to go outside anymore because it's too difficult for them to interact with people. There's not really a lot of really good effective therapies. So what if you can wear a headset, and imagine you've not been outside for the last 2 years. You're wearing this headset, and suddenly you're sitting on a sunny day on a bench in a park. 3 weeks later, you put on the headset, and you're in the street, and there's a couple of kids playing. 2 months later, you're wearing the headset and you're standing in the supermarket. 6 months down the line, you can suddenly actually go outside your door and take a walk around the block. If you can achieve that through VR technology, you give someone a part of their life back. You give them their freedom back. And that is such a powerful thing. I mean, in that sense, VR can touch so many different people and industries that's something that we get excited about. Of course, we do a lot of commercial things, but we balance it out between the two. Or educational content. Let's say you're a music teacher. All those cell phones in your classroom are very annoying because everyone keeps Snapchatting and talking to their friends. But what if that mobile phone will suddenly allow everyone in your classroom to play along with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra? suddenly that smartphone, through VR technology, becomes the most powerful educational tool that you have in your classroom. And everyone already has that. So sports, music, entertainment, all these things, yes, they are the first industries to move, to jump into this industry. But now we need to get to proper applications and into real storytelling. So we've done projects for the fashion industry. I'm going to skip that. For this brand, I mean, we do, of course, do commercial work because we need to make a bit of money. So we did a project for Tommy Hilfiger. And initially, they thought, oh, this is a cool marketing tool. But actually, what it turns out that this experience made the shopping experience a lot easier for their customers. They could go into a store and already have seen the collection because they could virtually attend their latest fashion show in New York. So they had seen the entire collection, would go into a flagship store and buy what they wanted instantly.
The biggest fight in boxing.
Now, one question that we get, are people interested in paying for content because all the content is free? Well, imagine this. This fight, the Mayweather versus Pac fight of the century, people paid $99 globally to watch a live stream of the event on their iPads, on their laptops. What if you could pay $3, $4 and actually be inside the ring next to the referee? Of course, people are going to be willing to pay for that. And you don't really realize the power of that kind of experience until you actually try it. Now, since you are a bit of a tech audience, I will also talk a bit about the tools of creating VR experiences. The thing is, with camera technology, there's these guys called the Lumiere brothers who invented one of the first cameras. And one of the first things they did was they created this experience, this film of this train driving into a theater. People that would see that had not seen something like that before. They would get scared and they would jump away from the screen and run out of the room because they thought the train would run them over. It took 15 years before content makers started using film technology to actually tell stories. Now we've come a long way, but the cameras for VR are still kind of in their infancy. A lot of people have been shooting VR with these huge rigs, like red Epic cameras, big circular rigs. That's like, the picture that's seen here, I mean, that's like nearly 500,000 worth of cameras to shoot a 360 video. I mean, that camera that you see in the car, they wanted to shoot a video for Mini. They had to actually cut off the entire top of the car because the camera didn't fit. So they drove half of the car with the cameras in them, recorded, and then recreated the entire top of the car in CGI to make a first VR experience. And taking the camera on your shoulder and walking around doesn't really work. Heavy and expensive crap. On the other hand, we are seeing the development of really small consumer devices. Small, cheap cameras, $300, $400, $500, that will work with your mobile phone. You just hold up the camera, press the button, and suddenly you can create your own 360 video. Yes, low quality, low resolution, and not stereoscopic, immersive 3D, but still kind of fun. You can capture your own wedding in VR, and 2 years later, you can go back in time and hear everyone gossip about your cool dress, or that it wasn't really cool. Now, so we have these low-end consumer devices. We have these really expensive high-end devices that don't really work for VR. What we'll see in the next year or so is the release of cameras that have been engineered from the ground up to create VR content, like the Lightshore camera, a camera from Unit 9, and of course, our camera systems. That will make it easier to create your own content. Now, it's not just about the camera. It's also about your post-production process. When we shoot with our camera, this is kind of what you get. You get all these different lenses that shoot all these different images with different color values and these different edges of the screen. So you see lots of weird things happening. Like these two dancers, they are right in between the seam, in the stitch line between two lenses. And that's something that is really difficult to correct in your post-production. That process is called stitching. Now, with VR, everyone will tell you, perfect stitching is not possible. You will always see defects and artifacts in the way you've combined these images. Well, yeah, that is true in most cases, but not with what we do. I mean, we've developed cool technology, cool software, cool algorithms to make something that is pixel perfect. That stitch does not have any flaws. So it's kind of fun. I mean, technology is not our main focus because we are about applications, but if we want to do something and there's no solution out there, we will actually create a solution. So then we also need, of course, cool workstations. We've been testing a lot of high-end workstations like the Z840s and graphics cards. We use the GTX 980 Ti's, but we've also been testing more high-end, really expensive cards like the M6000. The things you don't really need to, but they do help in terms of production stability. When we overclock our gaming cards, like the 980s, we burn them. I mean, we push them really hard, and we go through a number of these cards a year. But if we invest a bit more and we go for the high-end cards, that means our operators, our 3D modelers, our VR developers can do their work without their systems crashing and burning. Now, there's a couple of practical aspects to VR as well. I'll touch on that for a sec, because everyone that talks to us is always like, oh, can we just rent your camera, press a button, and shoot? It doesn't really work like that. You have a completely new visual language that you have to think about. So think about this. When you shoot a 2D film, your actor is there. When you shoot a 360 film, your actor can still be there, but the viewer might be looking that way. Now imagine the following scenario. You're putting on the headset, and suddenly you're in Times Square, New York. You see a big red staircase, and you see 50 people, a big band playing, and you hear all the music, and you hear all the traffic around you. And by the time you realize that you're actually in New York, you've already seen 40 seconds of a 60-second TV commercial, because in TV land, you kind of create a 60-second commercial format. So you've already missed a lot. Then suddenly, you hear these screeching tires. You look to your right, and you just see a cabbie and a bike messenger crashing into each other. Or you hear the bang, and you see that happened. And the cabbie's getting up, and the bike messenger is getting up. The cabbie's getting out. He's really angry and shouting. But you, as a viewer, don't know what happened. So you go back to second one of this 60-second commercial, and you decide, I'm going to look to the right and see what happened. As you turn to the right, you suddenly notice this diner behind you. There's this big window, and behind the diner, you see this really good-looking couple. Really posh, well-dressed, but they're having an argument. Now, the lady gets up on her high heels, in her long dress, storms out the diner, steps out into the street, and hails a cab. And the bike messenger just misses her. He swerves. You don't really know what happened, so we're going to go back one more time. And now we see something that across from the square, there's a guy with a camera and a telelens taking pictures of you. But you don't really know why. Now, what could have happened in the 60-second experience, if you would have focused on the couple behind, on the couple behind you, that could have led to a romantic comedy. If you focus on the guy, the cab driver and the bike messenger, that could lead to an action adventure. If you had focused on the guy with the camera, you might have found out that he was not actually taking pictures of you. He was hired by the husband or the wife of the guy that's sitting behind you, who she suspected of having an affair. So suddenly, in this 60-second format, you have almost 5 minutes of content, a story, of narrative that you can deliver to the viewer. Now, that changes everything. That changes the way you write, that changes the way you direct, that changes the way you produce your content. So it's a very different way of creating these experiences. Now, there's a couple of things that I can talk about more, so I'll wrap up with a little glimpse of the future. Now, the devices in the VR world have, of course, gone from really complex and expensive to a $2 piece of cardboard and your smartphone. And you will be able to get a pretty decent VR experience. Now, what's going to happen in the next 6 months, 12, 18 months? We'll see entertainment, but we also see concepts in retail and architecture, where we, for example, create virtual concept stores. But one other cool thing that's coming up is multi-user. Because all the VR experience so far, you're wearing this headset, and that's you in this virtual world. What if you could be there with a friend and actually go to a concert together? And you could be going to a concert in New York while you're in Amsterdam and your friend is in Paris. Who knows? That could work. We have that kind of stuff in development. Interfaces, huge next step. How do you control a VR experience if you don't see your hands? So that's all these kind of things that need to be developed, that need to be concepted. And that's what we would probably work with lots of you guys for. Now, there's a final thing that I want to leave you guys with. It's a project called The Void that brings a lot of the things that I've been talking about together. So take a look at this. So yeah, I mean, I've been talking about going beyond gaming, but this gets me really excited. There's 2 Voids coming to Amsterdam, so yeah, I mean, that's going to be pretty cool to experience. Now, I don't have all the answers when it comes to where the next 3 or 5 years of VR are going to go, but we are on a mission to change the world. We think that we can bring a lot of really amazing experiences to consumers that have no interest in tech, but do have an interest in exploring new parts of the world or going to places that they physically cannot visit. So we would love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear your ideas, no matter how crazy they are. And after the presentation, come talk to me and let's brainstorm. And we would love to take you on our mission to change the world. So thank you for your attention. And if there's any questions, I'd like to hear them. Questions? I see a question there. Now, there's this thing called the catch box. That's your microphone. So if someone can pass this catch box.
Hi.
Hey.
So you were saying before how your brain pretty much sometimes fills in the blanks to a certain extent.
Yep.
But I feel like especially when you're interacting with the world around you, you'd need some kind of tactile feedback. Like the video game industry now does that even in the form of like rumble packs and stuff. But do you see that happening in any form in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
If so, like how?
Absolutely. And that's a really good question. The question is tactile feedback. Things like sound and smell, of course, that's kind of, you can use your brain to fill in the blanks, but actually touching something, that's really difficult. So projects like the Void try to address that by having physical environments and projecting a virtual environment over that, so you can actually touch stuff. You can actually grab a door and open it. There's devices like, I mean, yes, the rumble packs. The rumble packs are getting to a really advanced stage where you actually feel not just your hands, but entire body suits. And there's technologies like gloves with little servos that will give you counter pressure. So when there's not a physical door, we can actually program it to give you a bit of resistance so you feel the door. And if we take it one step further, a couple of months ago, we tried a new piece of technology that a couple of colleagues of ours were working on. It's a strap that goes around your arm, and there's electrodes in there. And this allows the maker to actually take over what your muscles do. So suddenly, there's a bit of code that you write, and suddenly the user's arm goes up or down. You feel that, and you can try to resist it. It doesn't work because we basically bypassed your brain. We override it. Now that kind of technology is pretty scary, but at the same time, it could be used to help people that have had an accident and to basically retrain their muscles. But applying that to more entertaining experiences, gaming experiences, or even, for example, simulating surgery, trying to get feedback, those kind of technologies are definitely in development. Early days, so a couple of years down the line, but it's a very important part of the industry. It's for professional applications. For entertainment, not so much, because for entertainment experiences, you want to be able to keep the technology simple because it needs to scale up. Good question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question. I see a question there in the back.
Where?
Good catch. Oh, it broke. Oh, no, there's sound. Yes.
Thank you. You were talking about a stereoscopic view.
Yes.
And the problem I have with it is you're projecting it on a 2D plane called like the monitor. Mm-hmm. So I don't have different vocal lengths. Do you see a technology arising that's going to fix that? So I have like different perspectives?
Absolutely. Because yes, you're right. You're physically looking at one physical display that has a fixed distance from your eyes. Now, there are headsets in development that will work with eye tracking. One of those sets is called the Vove. So that uses an infrared camera inside the headset that looks and follows your pupils. So it looks at what layer of depth your pupil is focusing on. So that gives us basically in software, the option to create depth of field and to work with different focal lengths. Now, at the same time, that would require us, I mean, for gaming, that's fine, because we can dynamically, of course, set depth of field. But with filmed content, that's a different story, because we film at generally infinite depth. So we could use that kind of technology to create a artificial depth of field, or down the line we'll see cameras like the LITRO camera, which is a light field camera, which gives us all the data of depth of field to infinity and all the way up to a couple of inches from your eyes. Now combining that kind of technology with technologies like embedded eye tracking, that will allow you to have different focal lengths and a even more immersive experience. Good question. I like these technical questions. Next question. If there are any questions. Ah, there's a question right there. Okay, I have time for one more question.
Does it work? Yeah. I tried a lot of different VR systems like Virtual Boy and the 3DS and Oculus and the whatever thing that you put your phone in.
Yeah.
I get really sick, like really, really sick.
Yeah.
Whatever I've tried. Will that be better?
Absolutely. Motion sickness is one of the biggest issues and biggest challenges in VR because motion sickness is very different from user to user. Basically, it's dual, because on one end, the technology proves that it affects your brain and it affects your body in a physical sense. So there's one piece of technology that Samsung is working on, which is a little electrode that rests inside your ear, and that actually influences your inner ear, your balance center. Now, it's in very early stages, but I'm super sensitive to motion sickness. I cannot play any first-person shooter game or even Tomb Raider for more than 4 or 5 minutes before I get nauseated and I'm puking on the floor. So I know what you feel, and for me, it's challenging as well. But that little device, which is one of the first prototypes, it rests in your ear, it sends out a little pulse, and suddenly your nausea is way less, and is in a lot of cases gone. At the same time, improving technologies like frame rates, visual clarity, tracking speed of your software, that will all help to make it more natural. And there's a long way to go, but we will get there at some point. Now, that's all the questions I have time for. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to speak to you later.